Hello, ladies and gentlemen of District 31 in Anchorage, Alaska. My name is Daniel DiNardo. I'm a member of the Alaskan Independence Party, and I'm standing for election from the District 31 to the House of Representatives for the state of Alaska. In some of my YouTube presentations, these are discussions on a variety of issues that no candidate in the state of Alaska has any capability of speaking on because they're not learned, they're not studied in these issues, and all they are communist political party corporate hacks. That's all that they are. None of them will stand up to me in a public debate because I've defeated every one of them. I've defeated every attorney over a 26-year period in the so-called courts of Alaska. I've defeated the Alaska Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals continually, to where now, when they issue opinions in my cases, they put down, do not publish, do not alert the public to this decision, because they're embarrassed by it. They can't overcome the facts and the truth, and they can't overcome good common sense and rational legal argument based upon the common law and the inalienable rights of man espoused in the Declaration of Independence by Thomas Jefferson. I'd like to continue my discussion on communism because Alaska is under a direct threat by communism. The U.S. military here at Eielson and also at Elmendorf continually invites communist military units into the state for joint operational activities. I'm sure you're very well aware of in 1990, you have the Berlin Wall coming down, you have the so-called dismemberment of the Soviet Union into, it supposedly went from communism to basically a independent nation looking for freedom and justice and whatever else nomenclature the professional propagandists can put before the public. But in fact, in 1958, under Khrushchev at the 21st Communist Party Congress, it was determined that in 1989 and 1990, the Soviet Union would be fragmented into what appeared to the Western world to be independent nations. And those nations would in turn go out and join all the Western institutions such as NATO, the IMF, the Bank of International Settlements, the new European Economic Union, and all the hundreds of other corporate organizations, I might add, all over the world. But the Trojan horse in the whole plan was that these countries were to be continually controlled from within by the Communist International, which was founded by Lenin in 1923 and put into a corporate trust. So it was very important for them to carry this out first of all, for criminal globalism. Their objective has always been the destruction of the United States and world control. Secondly, they wanted a massive transfer of Western technology at virtually no cost, and they've achieved both of those aims. Thirdly, and most importantly to them, for the integrity of their landmass, was the takeover of Alaska. And that's why they're being invited on a continual basis into the state of Alaska by the so-called U.S. military, which is not a U.S. military. It's a foreign expeditionary mercenary force that is forced to go fight all these foreign wars because we're the largest debtor nation, and these foreign countries, particularly their military, own the bulk of U.S. 30-year bonds, 10-year bonds, 5-year notes, 2-year notes. They literally own this country. So they force us to go do their dirty work in the interest of the spread of international communism. They are not fighting for your freedom, and if you care to look at it, read the Patriot Act. You tell me how free you are once you understand the details of that diabolical act of George Bush and his Nazi Communist Party members in the Republican corporate party. They're bringing the Fourth Reich to America. That's what George Bush represents. And Obama represents a continuation of the same plan. It really doesn't matter which party you elect. They're all corporate, they're all communist, and they're out to destroy the United States, and they're also out to integrate the world under criminal globalism. Criminal globalism. That was designed by Nikolai Lenin at the beginning of the 20th century, if you care to read it. Political correctness, abortions, the destruction of the family, the environmental movement, the total organized, scientifically applied terrorist movement, all eloquently and very definitively and specifically detailed by Nikolai Lenin, of course then carried out by the likes of Stalin, and it continues all the way to the present, to where now they have taken over with the death of President Kennedy in 1963. That was one of their, what they call, provocative acts, in conjunction, of course, with the intelligence agencies within what's called the United States, euphemistically called, because it really doesn't exist anymore. So what we're dealing with is an international plan that had its roots basically hundreds of years ago. but now in the modern era called communism. But really, what it is Luciferian satanic atheism. It's the same fundamental battle that started in the Garden of Eden with Satan and Lucifer, whatever name you choose, taking on the Godhead of the Trinity. And this is its human manifestations, and that's why it uses these synthetic creatures called corporations and the total complicity of the Luciferian Bar Association. And this is why we are going to become an independent nation. Because the book of Revelation, which is absolutely emphatically correct on every detail, and has been proven continually, has predicted and has decreed by divine intervention itself that Alaska is going to become an independent country. And that's why Pope John Paul II came here twice. He was setting up the momentum, the spiritual momentum from the Trinity to see that this is carried out. Alaska is going to be the center of the counter-revolution that defeats the communist movement, but it's going to take some time, but we're going to build a republic. And this republic is called the land of the great eagle of the great land, and is specifically and repeatedly referred to in the book of Revelation. And I seriously invite you to take up that study and edify yourself so that you understand the part that you're going to be responsible for as a servant of the Trinity. And that's why we're all living here. I never had any intent of ever coming to Alaska, but I came here 34 years ago. Something drew me here. There's a powerful spiritual force at work here. There's a sense of freedom you find nowhere else in the world. And even with this complex, corrupt federalism, which is nothing but another name for communism, and the corruption of the Republican and the Democratic so-called parties, which are nothing but communist corporations, and the corrupt Communist Bar Association, we are making our way step by step. But the pace is going to pick up dramatically, and it's going to be basically overnight, the rending of the veil from top to bottom, and we are going to become an independent republic. And we're going to be the final one, and we are going to be the hope and light and the leadership of the world. That's correct, of the world. And that's all through divine grace and divine edict. At this point, I'm going to stop my discussion of communism. I'm going to take it up in another segment that I'm going to do immediately. And I invite you to make sure you visit YouTube, Daniel Space DiNardo on YouTube, and you're going to hear more and more discussions on these very fascinating but very important topics. Thank you very much.